Welcome back to the Yes Initiative. Today, we're going to be making chicken Milanese. So, we're going to need a few ingredients. Primarily, of course, we're going to need chicken. We're going to need to bread our chicken. And to do that, we're going to need a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, some breadcrumbs, and some flour. We're also going to need a little bit of egg. So first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to season our chicken. So we're going to put a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. And if you would like to put any other kind of seasoning to bump the flavor up, you can do that as well. Or the chicken. So anything that you would like to add, you certainly can. But I'm going to keep it fairly simple so that this can be something you can use for multiple dishes in the future. We are going to need a bit of flour, not a ton. Got about a cup of flour there. And that's going to be more than enough. You do want a bowl or something kind of large. This can be a messy process. Your hands will definitely get messy, so if you got something like me in a ring, you might want to take it off. It'll just save you scrubbing it later. Getting the flour. Second step, we're going to need a little bit of egg. And so we've got our second bowl for that. So we're going to grab our egg, and we're going to break that right into the bowl. And you're going to want just a tiny little bit of water. This is like an ounce of water maybe. It just thins out the egg a little bit. I'm using a whisk to beat this up. You could use a fork. You could use whatever is convenient. And you don't have to go too crazy. We're just mixing it up. And now we can get our breadcrumbs ready. The trick here is to not have your hands wet. So I do have some moisture on my hands. I'm going to grab a paper towel and dry them off. All right, now let's proceed with our breadcrumbs. Now the type of breadcrumbs I have here are panko breadcrumbs. These are like big kind of flaky breadcrumbs. They're not the same as what you might see like an Italian seasoned breadcrumb. You could use either one. It really doesn't matter. This is my prep. All right, let's get that out of our way. Now this is why it's important that your hands are dry and that they're clean. Because if you look at the breadcrumb, it's kind of big. And we don't want real big pieces like this. We want much smaller pieces. You could put this in a food processor. You could buy the other kind of breadcrumbs that are smaller, or you could just break it up with your hands like I'm about to. So that's what we're going to do. Okay. Now, we don't have to get them so fine that there's no big chunks, but we definitely do want a range. This is going to help us have like a nice even coating. Chicken, well, I'm going to add a little bit of seasoning to my breadcrumbs. So I have a little bit of dried basil here. Just a couple sprinkles, not a ton. And I have a little bit of dried parsley here. I'm going to add just a little pinch of that as well. This is going to add some flavor, but it's also going to make it look a lot prettier when it's done. Where we need to line our bowls up. So we're going to line them up in the order that we're using stuff. So first, we need the chicken. Then, the chicken is going to go into the flour. Then, it is going to go into the egg wash. And then, it is going to go into the breadcrumbs. I made a mistake in the filming of this part because I've got egg wash on both my hands. You want to try to keep at least one hand dry so that when you dip it into the flour, you can use your dry hand to move it around in the flour and you won't end up with a huge mess. In just a moment, you'll see me demonstrate this the correct way. we're gonna do, we're gonna put this in the flour. We're gonna shake the bowl around a little bit. The idea is to get the chicken totally covered. Okay, so as you can see, we've got our chicken covered in flour all over the place. Doesn't need to be a ton of flour. It just needs to stick to any extra moisture that's on there. Let's put that in to our egg. Let me get this out of the way so you guys can see better. Okay, so for the egg, all we're gonna do is kind of slosh it around and make sure it covers everywhere that there's flour. Now, you're probably gonna need to touch this to make sure that happens and kind of flip it over, just like that. So, and we can bring our bowl over here, and what I'm doing now is I'm going to demonstrate this wet hand, dry hand technique. So this hand is dry, and if I put it in here, nothing's really going to stick to it. Couple little crumbs, but nothing much. But watch what happens if I do the egg hand like that. It really sticks to it. Okay? So that's the dry hand, wet hand thing. All right, so we're gonna take our first piece of chicken and shake the bowl so that everything is kind of even on the bottom. And now, again, just shimmy the bowl around. We're trying to get breadcrumbs on as much of it as you can. And we're trying to do as much as we can without actually touching the chicken. Okay, so now I'm going to take my dry hand. I'm going to try to get underneath it on the non-wet part. And I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to do the shaky thing again. And then you're just going to press it in a little bit. And then you want to flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. Sprinkle your breadcrumbs on top. And press it down. Shake off the excess. So at this point, we've got all our sort of raw chicken handling out of the way. We've got both of our chicken breasts that we're going to be cooking here, breaded, seasoned. We're going to turn that on. We're going to put it to medium-low heat. We're going to add a little bit of oil, and we're going to add a little bit of butter. We've got our oil. Now for the oil, you want probably about 1/4 cup. Maybe 1.5 tablespoons. It's got the little markings on the side. It's not super important exactly how much it is, but it's nice to have a blend of butter and oil. It's going to give a much nicer flavor to our chicken breast. We're going to let the butter melt until we can mix it up into the oil and it all looks like one substance. We'll occasionally shake the pan around just so that it doesn't start to burn. Again, you're going to want to just shake the pan around to get everything combined into a nice, even cooking liquid. Time to put our chicken in the pan. As we do this, we want to lay it in nice and gently and then press it just a little bit so that it gets a nice, even coating on the bottom with the oil. Once we've got the chicken in the pan, we're going to want to leave it alone. Don't try to move it around too much. All it's going to do is cause sticking. The other thing we need to be careful about is making sure that we've got even heat in our pan. You can see me throughout this video moving the pan around instead of the actual chicken to try to get the hot spots just right. here we can see our chicken just starting to brown. It's not quite ready to be turned or flipped or anything like that. But this is something that you want to look at, just the edge of the chicken, and that will give you the best indication of how it's doing on the underside. I'm repositioning the chicken so that the outside edges get the same amount of heat as the inside edges already have. Every now and again, you'll probably want to rock the pan just so that you can get the oil and butter mixing all over the place and everything stays nice and even. Time to flip our chicken over. As you can see, we've got a nice golden brown, but we do have some parts that aren't quite crispy. This is a technique called basting. I'm just taking the hot oil and splashing it on top of the chicken and the parts that aren't so crispy with a spoon. This is slightly dangerous. If you get any of this oil on you, it will burn you badly. So please, if you attempt to do this, be very careful. As you can see, the basting has evened the color of the chicken out, and now we have a nice crispy coating everywhere. Again, we're just moving the chicken around, trying to make sure we get that golden crispy color everywhere and that it's nice and even. No burnt spots and no raw spots. Okay, let's turn these over and see how our color is doing. Nice and golden brown. Nice and golden brown. Let's see if it feels good. This side doesn't quite feel crispy, so I'm going to use my little basting trick again. Now that we've flipped our chicken over, I can see we've got a little bit of uneven color. I'm going to baste it for just a few more seconds to make it look as nice as we possibly can. Once again, the basting isn't necessary, but it does make for a much nicer finished product. If you don't feel comfortable doing this, you definitely don't have to. Our chicken is pretty much done at this point, so we're going to take it out of the pan, and when we put it onto our plate, we're going to put a paper towel underneath to absorb any excess grease so that it doesn't become a greasy mess. So now here we've got our chicken Milanese. If you want to put a little bit more salt on now, just to make sure it's thoroughly seasoned, you can. If you have concerns about salt, you could omit salt from this completely. But I'm going to add just a little bit while it's still hot and while that salt will stick to the chicken. Now, what are we going to do with this? This doesn't really seem like a whole meal. And if you look at my past couple videos, it doesn't seem like those were whole meals either. We made tomato sauce and we made salad dressing. So, we're going to actually combine what we've learned from our past two videos into this video, and we're going to make chicken Parmesan. So, we can just pull out our red sauce that we had made previously. We can cook a little bit of pasta if we want, so that we can have pasta, chicken, and red sauce. To turn our chicken Milanese into a chicken Parmesan, we're going to put it on a baking sheet, add a little bit of red sauce, add a little bit of cheese, and pop it in the oven for a few minutes. So that's how we're looking right now. We're just gonna pop this in the toaster oven for 3, 4, 5 minutes until the cheese starts to melt. To complete our meal, we're gonna put a pot of water on the stove and let it come up to a boil. Once it's boiled, we're gonna add our pasta and we're gonna let that cook until it's just about tender. At that point, we'll add in some red sauce, mix it around, and put it on our plate. Since we're trying to be a little bit healthy, we're going to make a super quick salad to eat with our chicken Parmesan as well. The bulk of our salad is romaine lettuce. I'm also going to be adding some carrots and cucumbers in the salad dressing that we made the other day. Our salad is complete. Our pasta's on the plate. Now all we've got to do is add our chicken.
If you like these videos, turn on notifications and press subscribe.